Okay, so today we're going to do rules and regulations, the part that I hate. It's easy for some people. I like the technical part. Other people have trouble with that, so it all depends. This is,
Bob, have you actually opened the slides? Because I'm just seeing your screen where it shows the four slides the four files.
I guess I have to share it again.
Ooh.
Oh, there it is. That's one. How about now?
That's good.
Okay,
Now it
Thank you.
says recording at top.
I know, but I already started.
That's his note to remind him. Oh,
Because
that's your note to remind
You see the little red dot down there says I'm recording. I figured that out finally. Uh, all of these basically come from the FCC Part 97 document, which I think I sent everybody a copy of. It's not an easy read, it's written by lawyers, but all the information is in there. And we'll also talk a little bit about interference on what repeater frequency coordinators are and do in the International Telecommunications Union, which defines three different regions of the Earth uh, as far as the telecommunications, I guess, call them rules. There's different requirements for region 2, which is what we're in, as opposed to region 1 and 3. And I don't remember which way they go. I think they go clockwise. I think Asia is 1 and Europe is 3, but I'm not sure. Anybody know?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's like my guess would be that the UK probably won because they like to put themselves
Well, that could
as,
be,
as one.
but it's probably in France
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's spelled
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
Frenchy.
Okay.
Internationally. Okay. So some of the definitions that you're going to need to remember is that the FCC is the regulator and enforcer of the amateur radio service rules. However, they delegate the details of that, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to voluntary frequency coordinators and also the band plans, which are done by that type of group. One of the definitions that will be on the exam, you might see, is the basis and purpose of the amateur radio service is to advance skills in the technical and communication phases of the radio art. So, which agency regulates and enforces the rules for the amateur radio service in the United States?
Charlie.
Charlie.
Which of the following is part of the basis and purpose of the amateur radio service?
Yeah.
Delta.
Yeah, Charlie.
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 But it should be
Charlie.
Delta.
Charlie.
Mm.
All right. Another definition is a beacon. And you'll see these on satellites. There are a number of ground-based beacons around the world that send out signals constantly, so that you can kind of see what propagation is doing by whether or not you can receive certain beacons or not. It's defined as an amateur station transmitting communications for the purposes of observing propagation or related experimental activities. And you can put up your own beacon. frequency authorized for it. Most of them are on the amateur radio frequencies. I think there's some that the FAA uses also. Do you know that one?
No, I
Okay.
don't.
If Bill was here, he'd probably give us a lecture on it. And they're across the bands from low frequency all the way up to the UHF and microwave. And one of the reasons they do that is because propagation varies depending on the frequency. So you may be doing very well on 20 meters and nothing else works, or vice versa. And at any point in time, it can change because the solar activity and the upper atmosphere changes a lot. And can be used for calibrating antennas and receivers. When it's on a satellite, okay, they're normally in the VHF and UHF bands, the 2 meter and 70 centimeter typically, can be other frequencies. And they also will usually send information about the satellite, like health and status, like voltage, current, temperatures, things like that. They define a space station as an amateur station located more than 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Remember, this is not the space station, it's a space station. And they say most of them are located on satellites that orbit the Earth, meaning it could be an amateur transmitter on a satellite that might even be a commercial satellite or something else. So this amateur satellite part of it is called a space station.
Question.
Okay.
They say it's satellites that orbit the Earth. My understanding is that most of these satellites that do this are geostationary and stay in the same spot. They don't orbit. They orbit
No,
with the Earth.
that's only geostationary satellites,
So there are
like
others?
GPS.
Yeah, so there are others. Okay.
Like TV satellites and geostationary,
Right.
because those that dishes have to
Yeah, they're
stay still.
22,000 miles up there in
But
the
they
same
just,
spot.
satellites that
Move the Earth. Okay.
But CubeSats and all the amateur satellites and space station, it's
Government
International
satellite,
Space Station.
they can take pictures of there.
They're not in geostationary orbits.
Right.
Elon Musk was, what's he shooting for, 6,000 Starlink?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, those are geostationary.
yeah.
No, they're Leos.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, really?
yeah, his,
Well, then, I mean, there must be some gaps every once in a
Well,
while.
it's got to have a mesh network of satellites.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
That's why there's so many, because one maybe bounce off the other. If it's
right,
not-
that's what I'm saying, so.
So I would think it would just go to the next one.
Because when it's Leo, their period is pretty fast.
Yeah, like he said, it's gotta be a mesh. so
And we'll
that
get to Leo in a minute.
Spaced out,
Right.
and moving.
And he's,
Okay.
I mean,
planning
you
on
do that with
using,
GPS, you go, you notice that little gap for a second, and it goes to another one.
Okay, these usually have a transponder or a repeater, okay? Operating under automatic control, and we'll get to that a little bit later on what the definition of automatic versus remote. And they can be controlled or communicated by ground stations, which is any station that's not a space station. So if it's not a space station, it's assumed to be on the ground. What is the FCC Part 97 definition of a beacon? You were.
Yeah.
You think the National Weather Service
Oh, right,
owns those satellites?
yeah, I'm not reading it right, I guess. I just thought weather information, and then I stopped reading.
Yeah, weather in space is not, it's kind of different. It'd be solar weather.
Yeah,
Yep, I think it's Delta. What is the Part 97 definition of a space station? Right. The 50 kilometers is the key.
I wonder why they didn't use a Carmen line like everyone else.
I don't know. They define harmful interference as any interference which endangers the functioning of radio navigation service or other safety services, or seriously degrades, obstructs, or repeatedly interrupts a radio communication service operating in accordance with the radio regulations. So basically anything that messes up communications. And requirement is that an amateur station should never willfully interfere. Now, accidentally interfering is different than willfully interfering. And there's been a few cases where people have continuously willfully interfered and got some pretty hefty fines. Like what, $20,000-$30,000 or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
And they probably had their license revoked. When is willful
CB
interference?
people don't fall into that category.
Huh?
The CB people, they
Oh,
interfere with
that's-
each other all the time.
Yeah, that's the Wild West. When is willful interference to other amateur stations permitted?
No time. And read the other ones.
Well, there could be an exception. And there probably is, if it was a case of
Life.
bodily, injury or damage to personal property, which is sort of the exception to everything where you can operate without a license anywhere, whatever means necessary, if it's really an emergency.
Kind of like Federal Aviation Regulation 91-121, that in case of an emergency, the pilot in command can ignore all regulations to safely complete the flight.
Yeah. Okay, the FCC assigns the repeater frequency responsibility to the volunteer regional frequency coordinators. And those are groups around the country in the various regions that are responsible for, I guess you'd say, they recommend transmit receive channels or frequencies for repeaters. They basically are the control body for those channel assignments or frequency assignments. And they're selected by, and I don't know how this process works, maybe Byron does, by local amateurs who have repeaters or auxiliary stations. So it's a voluntary group that is delegated by the FCC. Do you know where a local?
Our group is now FASMO. We had one before. And they found out that they were taking bribes, so it had to be dissolved.
Okay.
Why would they be taking bribes? Well, down around Miami, it's very dense and getting repeater
Yeah.
frequencies is hard.
Oh, okay.
Okay, which of the following entities recommends transmit or receive channels and other parameters for auxiliary and repeater stations?
Bravo.
Who selects a frequency coordinator?
Charlie? Yep.
Sounds good. Okay. You're never allowed to operate as an amateur outside the amateur radio bands, and you can be fined, you can lose your license. I don't know if you can be jailed, but they consider it a serious offense, although there aren't enough FCC people around that it's a problem for an occasional infraction.
I worked a case with the FCC a few years ago where we had someone willfully transmitting on an emergency frequency and wouldn't respond. And the FCC authorized me to inform them that the FBI would be on their way with a fire axe to cut a hole in the side of their airplane to turn off the transmitter if they didn't comply. You remember that?
Magically, they got there inside of like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was a woman that owned it. She was being a real bitch. And the minute her husband heard that I was sending the FBI out to cut open their hangar in their airplane, he immediately went out and turned off the transmitter.
Okay, as a technician, you have some limited privileges in the HF band, basically. Single sideband CW and data on 10 meters. You can also do CW or Morse code on 80, 40, and 15, but you're limited to 200 watts peak envelope power. And also 200 watts PEP on the sideband and data section of 10 meters.
And now you can do CW from your computer if you aren't good with a key.
You have full privileges on the VHF, UHF and above, and a full 1500 watts peak envelope power.
Don't threaten me doing that anytime soon.
So I want to find out which who sells the 1500 watt amplifiers for VHF.
Yeah, right. Well, you can build one.
Yeah.
You'd almost have to.
It's very large heat sink.
Transmitting, not receiving, right? This
Right,
is-
transmitting. Anybody can receive any frequency.
I got you,
It's just restriction on transmitting.
got you.
Not only the frequency bands, but the power you're allowed to use or the mode. Because if you remember the band chart, I think I gave everybody one. The bands are broken up into different sections where you can do CW usually on the bottom end, and then they stick data kind of next to it, and then voice is usually on the upper end.
So I can do 1500 watts at 5.1 gig.
Well, you'd need to do that if you wanted to do moon bounce up there.
It took me something.
You know, a nice healthy mesh network.
Oh, there's a typo there. That should be 2, not TP. I was wondering what that was. There's a limitation.
What does TP stand for?
A limitation of 50 watts peak envelope power on the 1.25 meter band, which I don't know that that's used very often. It's what?
It's shared with medical device.
Isn't that also used as a control band for a lot of things?
Yeah, that's why they introduced primarily as for control. But they're like EMS, emergency medical services. They'll have some little things that communicate there.
Okay. This is a little frequency chart for the bands, starting down at the LF, 160 meters, and going up to the 10 meter band. And you see, as a technician, your only privileges are on the 10 meter band from 28.3 to 28.5, where you have single sideband and phone.
That's all you need. The only thing you want to talk is on the mosquito net, 28.333, 7 o'clock.
And you're limited to 200 watts PEP.
I don't be threatening that either. 200 watts is expensive.
As we move up in the 6 meter and all the way up to 1.25, you have CW privileges down at the bottom end of the 6 meter. You got all modes above that. On 2 meters, you can do CW at the bottom. All the other modes above the CW subband. And the 1.25 meter there's a special mode for fixed digital message forwarding. I don't really know what that is, but you just need to remember that that's a special mode limited to 50 watts on the 1.25 meter band. There could be a question.
On the previous slide, there was ready RCCY. What was that again?
Radio teletype.
When it's just typing,
Mhm.
like a text message.
It's the old teletype type communications, except through radio as opposed to hardline. Old teletypes used to type, and it was a current loop thing, and other teletype machines were somehow connected on that current loop, and they would.
It's a little bit slow, but not too slow. It's like 25 characters per minute. It's just like that. But most people type about that speed.
Did you have a comment, Dan?
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure I heard someone say that once, like on your previous slide from this one here, it designates a small sliver there that's CW only. But I'm pretty sure that I heard somebody say at one time that CW is valid across the band. You don't have to stick to that one small, it's just that one little sliver is CW only, so the voice can't interfere.
Oh, so I can do CW where it says all modes that include CW.
Yes.
The thing is that the band plan is a amateur radio deal. It is not an FCC deal.
Yeah, it's a recommendation.
It is a recommendation, not a law. So if you find rude people, it does happen sometimes.
Or I guess because everybody's just, you just decide to do something and you bump into somebody.
Yeah, well, like QRP, there are certain frequencies that are supposed to be just for QRP operators. But almost no one knows what they are unless you're a QRP operator. So you'll find, big 1,500 watt station having conversation on the QRP frequency.
So basically, the UHF and above, you can operate all modes and maximum power, which is 1,500 watts.
There's a lot of activity there, 900 and 1,300 minutes.
Well, in the 70 centimeter, most of your a lot of your repeaters are on the 70 centimeter band.
Yeah, all the radios that I've seen recently are,
2 meter and 70 centimeter.
But I don't.
Sometimes you see a tri-bander, which will throw in 23 centimeters. Or I think I've seen where they have the 1.5 meter as a tri-band.
I also, when I go to repeater hook, I don't see any repeaters in that space, so.
Which,
The 900.
oh, yeah, I don't know where,
What's the, I guess.
it's really kind of an amateur thing for.
Somebody, but we don't know who it is.
Yes.
There's not many radios that are built off the shelf for that. Usually people are taking commercial gear and converting it for amateur radios to do that stuff. And these people are just tinkering to tinker.
Or you could take your regular HF radio and use a transverter to do it also.
And real quick, I just received this little device yesterday in the mail. I haven't had a chance to play with it much. This is a Bluetooth receiver that plugs into any handheld that's got the standard programming.
K1 connector, right?
Yeah, and you can use it to program Bayfongs, anything else via Bluetooth from your phone with the Oddmaster.
Can you use it to put a headset on there?
No,
No?
this is only in for the radio, not out.
Okay.
But
Okay. Which frequency is in the 6 meter amateur band? So remember your formula. 300 divided by the frequency in megahertz to find the approximate wavelength.
Bravo.
So
And when you want to know that frequency,
if we do 6 meters into 300,
So that's a DX calling frequency, isn't it, for 6 years?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
So,
Was it, no.
It's, well, I didn't do all that math in my head, I just memorized it to be the 52. And
well, okay. See, it's easier for me to do the math than memorize.
3 by 6 is 5.
yeah, I didn't do the math, I just memorized that, and I know the next one would be 10 and so on.
Which amateur band includes 146.52,
Again, I just memorized that.
because that is a standard calling frequency, simplex calling frequency
Dilly bar.
for 2 meters.
Delta.
Dilly bar, I like them better.
On which HF band does a technician class operator have phone privileges? Read it carefully.
Oh, yeah, he is.
None.
I bet you Bob knows the answer.
None?
Bravo.
What, I mean, I don't understand what phone privileges are.
Voice, single side band, AM.
Oh, right, single sideband. I forgot, okay.
That's what we call phone.
I forgot that single sideband was allowed, yeah, I thought it was just CW.
So you can be doing FM. Normally you would be doing single sideband at that frequency, but it's still phone.
Right.
So
And phone is kind of like telephone, it's audio,
Yeah.
you're talking.
I get it, I forgot that single sideband was included. In 10 minutes.
Well, it's the only place as a tech you can use single sideband. In that
and the
section of the 10-meter band.
Where it says all mode though, I can use single sideband.
If it says all modes for a band, you can use it, but that's all the UHF.
There's nobody listening on those bands. You have to know where to go, right? Because you have to be set to single sideband to listen to it too.
Which of the following frequency ranges are available for phone operation by a technician class operator?
I just memorized that one too. That's Charlie.
I'm glad you have a good memory.
Yeah.
It's better for me to memorize than try to do
Well, that one you kind of have to memorize.
that.
All right. 28.3 to 28.5, which, and 28.5 is the top end, right? The band
Yeah.
end.
Well, that is the top of the whole thing.
I think it is.
So that must be pretty popular there, right? Because since amateurs are allowed, there
Yeah.
must be a lot of single sideband going on. Imagine.
Well, there's been a lot lately, there's been a lot of activity on 10 meters.
7 years from now, 6 years from now, probably not. Because the solar cycle will be, near the bottom.
Where may single sideband phone be used in amateur bands above 50 megahertz? It's kind of a tricky one.
Some segments of all the bands.
You would be right. Which of the following VHF, UHF band segments are limited to CW or Morse code only? Now, did you memorize that chart I had?
I did not. I'm looking at it. I'm just gonna rule out 900 is not it. So it's definitely not all of the above.
Okay.
And so it's gotta be either A or B. But I can't remember because that.
Well, remember where they put CW
Right in the
at
beginning.
the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Dilly bars.
So I would have just tossed a coin. But I'm gonna go Bravo.
Dilly bars taste very good. You should try one.
Sorry.
Wow.
The bottom of the band.
But isn't 219, because it's running into 420 and 420.1, those are also the bottoms. Starts at 220, starts at 420.
Well, but
It's not there.
You need to challenge that question to the exam pool.
I think the reason it's wrong is the 219 to 220.
All right, with the 220.0 to 220.1.
That's digital messaging.
Yeah, 219 is out of the spectrum. That's correct. That's why I'm wrong.
How many amateurs use the 219 to 220 megahertz segment of, excuse me, how may amateurs use the 219 to 220 segment of the 1.25 meter band?
I'm gonna go with fixed digital because we saw that one before. We didn't know what it did.
Right. And that's why the previous one wasn't Baker or Bravo. Why should you not set your transmit frequency to be exactly at the edge of an amateur band or sub band? I do.
Frequency drift. Yeah, I mean, I would say all of the above.
Remember one of those early charts about how you were not supposed to operate outside the band?
So that's Bravo, not going outside the band, but if there's a frequency drift, you can drift outside the band.
You could.
And then
So what do you do about it?
calibration error, you're also outside the band, so
So what do you do about it?
all of the above.
How do you?
Go further in the band.
All right. So the answer is
All of the above.
all the above. Okay, some more definitions. The FCC regulates and enforces the amateur radio service rules and, oh, this is what we talked about. Okay. Just going over them again. Main thing is the basis and purpose of advancing skills in the technical and communication phases of the radio art. Beacons are amateur stations transmitting communications for the purpose of observing propagation or related experimental activities. A space station is defined as an amateur station located more than 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Does not have to be, well, actually, it couldn't be geostationary at 50 kilometers.
Why do they not use the car?
I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
That is the scientifically accepted edge of space.
They wanted their own definition.
Yeah.
Willful interference is defined as interfering with other amateur stations, and it's never permitted, except in a case of an emergency, which they don't point out. The volunteer regional frequency coordinators are amateur operators who have repeaters or auxiliary stations in that region, and they recommend and basically maintain the frequency allocations for those repeaters or auxiliary stations. The things on that chart, you need to remember the 28 to 28.3 and 10 meters for data, and the 28.3 to 28.5 for single sideband. The 50 to 50.1 is CW, which is 1500 watts. The 10 meters, 200 watts. We got CW on the bottom end of the 2 meter band at 1500, and all modes from above the CW subband at 1500 watts. And the fixed digital message forwarding at 50 watts in the 219 to 220 on the 1.25 meter band. And you need to always avoid tuning too close to the band edges because you could have drift. Your calibration could be way off. I mean, your dial might say it's 14.15 and it's off by.
Can I go on record saying that I prefer draft to drift?
Draft. And that you need to know how wide your sidebands are. Remember, for single sideband, it's 3 kilohertz. So you need to be, if you're on lower sideband, you need to be 3 kilohertz above at least the bottom of the band. That's assuming you don't have drift or calibration errors. And if you're doing upper sideband, you need to be 3 kilohertz or more below the top of the band. Any questions on those?